However, the Masoretic text's reading of Pule is supported by the Dead Sea Scroll of Isaiah and the Syriac Peshitta. Some scholars have suggested that Pule was the island Philly in the Nile. Punishment. See crime and punishment. Punites of belonging to Pava or Pa. The family descendants of Issachar's second son, Pova. New 26. 23. Pun and Punon. A campsite between Zamona and Oboth that Israel reached sometime after leaving Mount Hor Jebel Madura. New 33. 41-43 Its location has not been determined with certainty, but it is generally identified with Finan, about 30 km 19 ms of Ain Husb. Pupil. The opening in the colored iris of the eye. It appears black because behind the pupil is the dark interior of the eye. The pupil changes in size as the iris adjusts to existing light conditions. Light enters the clear cornea, passes through the pupil and into the eye's lens. The Hebrew word middle. No text to acute miritra longo. Purification 715 law is to be so treated. PR 7. 2 Mentioning God's fatherly care of Israel, Deuteronomy 32. 10 says that he safeguarded the nation as the pupil of his eye. David prayed that he would be protected and cared for by God as the pupil of the eyeball. PS 17. 8 He wanted Jehovah to be quick to act in his behalf when under enemy attack. Compares Act 2. 8. Where the Hebrew ba. Eyeball, is used. CI. Disciple. Pupil also means one who learns or takes instruction, a disciple. Thus some Bible versions use it to render the Greek tes, as at Luke 6. 40 ne, def, nw, at. On this meaning, see disciple. Per. A non-Hebrew word found at Esther 3. 7 and 9. 24, 26. It means lot heb. Go middle. See lot, I. This is the singular form, the plural being Purim. As 9. 26, 28-32 Per is linked with an Akkadian word, Puru, meaning lot. It is the source of the name of the Jewish festival Purim. See Purim. Puripura. The attendant, probably armor-bearer, of Gideon who went with him during the night to spy on the Midianite camp. JG 7. 9-15. Purchase. Something acquired as a result of giving in exchange items of value. Money, goods, services, or even a life. As early as Abraham's day people were formally buying and selling goods, properties, or services, using a medium of exchange such as money, much the same as today. Abraham purchased with money male slaves. GE 17. 12, 13 Upon Sarah's death Abraham formally purchased a family burial plot from Ephron, one of the sons of Heth. GE 23. 3-20. 49. 29-32 The details of that first scripturally recorded legal contract of history are interesting. In a true display of courtesy Abraham bowed down when making his offer. Not the field, but only the cave which is at the extremity of Ephron's field is what Abraham wanted to buy. Ephron made a counter-offer. Whether he was feigning Oriental liberality by saying he would give the property to Abraham GE 23. 7-11, or as some think, he was merely expressing willingness to part with it, that is give it up for a price, is not certain. What is certain is his insistence that both the cave and the field be included in the deal. Final agreement was reached, the price named, the bargain made, and the money carefully weighed out, 400 silver shekels current with the merchants. C. $880 GE 23. 16 In those days money was not minted into coins but was weighed on scales. Thus the field and the cave that was in it and all the trees that were in the field, which were within all its boundaries round about, became confirmed to Abraham as his purchased property. All this legal transaction took place in the presence of both parties and witnesses, yes, before the eyes of the sons of Heth among all those entering the gate of his city. GE 23. 17, 18 Similarly, Jacob later purchased a tract of land from the Shechemites. GE 33. 18, 19. During a 7-year famine, Joseph, as the Prime Minister of Egypt, sold grain at first for money, and when that was exhausted, for payment he accepted their domestic animals, next the land, and finally the people themselves. GE 42. 2-25. 47. 13-23. The law of Moses strictly forbade buying and selling on the Sabbath, as it also prohibited unfair business dealings. During Israel's apostasy these laws were often violated. LA 25. 14-17. NE 10. 31. 13. 15-18. AM 8. 4-6. When King David wanted to purchase the threshing floor of Araunah-Ornan, the man graciously tried to give it to the king. However, David insisted on paying a sum of 50 silver shekels $110 for the immediate altar site, plus the necessary sacrificial materials. Later, it appears, more of the surrounding property was added to include an area large enough for the whole temple site, the purchase price being 600 gold shekels by weight c. $77,070. 2-24. 21-24. 1ch21. 22-25 During the reigns of both kings Jehoash and Josiah, purchases of materials Otextoi acute Miritra Longo, Purim 716 Purim. The festival celebrated on the 14th and 15th of Adar, the last month of the Jewish year, corresponding to late February and early March. Also called the Festival of Lots. As 9. 21 The name comes from the act of Haman in casting per lot to determine the auspicious day to carry out an extermination plot against the Jews. Being a Nagagite, perhaps a royal Amalekite, and a worshipper of pagan deities, he was resorting to this as a species of divination. As 3. 7. La. FTN. See divination. Lot, I per. In King Ahasuerus' I 12th year, on Nisan 13, apparently in the spring of 484 BCE, the official extermination decree that Haman had induced the king to approve was prepared for all the Persian provinces, commanding the destruction of the Jews. Commemoration of deliverance. The festival commemorates the Jews' deliverance from destruction through Haman's plot. Consequently, the name Purim was probably given by the Jews in irony. As 9. 24-26 It is also called in the apocryphal book of Maccabees Mordecai's Day, since Mordecai played an important part in the events pertaining to the festival. 2 Maccabees 15. 36, through the efforts of Queen Esther, at the risks of her life and as directed by her older cousin Mordecai, the Jews were delivered. Esther fasted for 3 days before seeking an audience with the king to invite him to a banquet, and then to a second banquet where her petition could be presented. As 4. 6. 5. 8 The petition was favorably heard, and since the original decree could not be changed on account of the unchangeable law of the Medes and Persians Dar 6. 8. Another decree was issued on the 23rd day of Sivan. This document granted the Jews the right to defend themselves and enabled them to prepare. It was written by Mordecai and translated into many languages for various districts of the Persian Empire. The Jews fought with the help of the princes, satraps, and governors, and turned the tables on the anti-Jewish enemies. A great slaughter took place on Adar 13, not of the Jews, but of their enemies. It continued in the royal city of Shushan through the 14th. On the 14th day of Adar the Jews in the jurisdictional districts rested, and those in Shushan on the 15th day, with banqueting and rejoicing. As 8. 3. 9. 19. To commemorate this deliverance, Mordecai imposed upon the Jews the obligation to observe Adar 14 and 15 each year with banqueting and rejoicing and sending portions to one another and gifts to the poor people. As 9. 20-22 Later, another letter was written with the confirmation of Esther the Queen commanding this festival. It was to be held in each generation, in each family, jurisdictional district, and city at the appointed time each year. As 9. 28-31. Siesta, Book of. The festival is celebrated by the Jews to this day in a detailed way, with many additions. One of the traditional enlargements that came in the process of time was the setting aside of the 13th day of Adar as a day of fasting, called the Fast of Esther. Trade or labor is not prohibited during this festival. A question on John 5. 1. There is no direct mention of the festival of Purim in the Christian Greek scriptures. Some have claimed that there is a reference to it at John 5. 1. After these things there was a festival of the Jews, and Jesus went up to Jerusalem. However, the application of this verse to the festival of Purim is unsubstantiated. Certain manuscripts have the definite article, reading, the festival of the Jews. CNWFTN. This would indicate that it must have been one of the 3 solemn seasonal festivals listed in Deuteronomy 16. 16, especially when we note that Jesus went up to Jerusalem, which he would not be required to do to keep the festival of Purim. Purim was connected more with the local synagogue and the local area than with the temple. The festival was to be kept in the city of one's residence. It is also o textuale acute miritra longo, Prus 717 instruction. Mordecai respected God's decree and refused to bow to Haman. S3. 2, 5. X 17. 14-16 Also, the words of Mordecai to Esther as 4. 14 indicate that he looked to a higher power for deliverance for the Jews, and Esther's fasting before entering the king's presence with her original petition, a banquet invitation, indicated her appeal to God for help. As 4. 16. Purple. See colors. Dyes, dyeing. Purse. A bag or pouch used by both men and women to carry gold, silver, copper, coined money, or other items. Women sometimes had ornamental purses, or handbags, possibly of a long, round shape. Issa 3. 16, 22. 46. 6. Mount 10. 9 Early purses were made of leather, of woven rushes, or of cotton. Since they were in the form of bags, they were drawn together and secured at the neck by means of leather straps or other cords. See bag. Also in use was the girdle purse, literally, girdle. Gr. Zoini. Mount 10. 9. Mr. 6. 8. Perhaps a type of money belt. Either the girdle had a hollow space in which money could be carried, or if the girdle was made of cloth and worn in folds, the money was kept in its folds. Jesus, when sending out his 70 disciples in preaching work, evidently in Judea, told them not to provide themselves with purses, indicating that Jehovah God would provide for them through fellow Israelites, among whom hospitality was a custom. Luke 10. 1, 4, 7 Shortly before his death, however, Jesus advised the apostles to carry purses, for he knew that his disciples would soon be scattered and persecuted. Because of official opposition, even persons favoring their message might be afraid to assist them. Also, they would soon be carrying the kingdom message to Gentile lands. All of this would require that Jesus' followers be prepared to care for themselves materially. Luke 22. 35, 36. Highlighting the excelling value of spiritual things, Jesus urged his followers to make lasting purses for themselves, acquiring heavenly treasure. Luke 12. 33. Put. A son of Ham. Ge 10. 6. 1 ch 1. 8 Although Put is mentioned elsewhere in the Bible, none of his individual offspring are named. Often his descendants lent military support to Egypt. Ge 46. 9. As 30. 4-6. Na 3. 9 They served as mercenaries in the armies of Tyre and contributed to that city's greatness. As 27. 3, 10 It was also foretold that Put would be among the forces of Gog of Magog. As 38. 5. Available evidence points to a connection between Put and the Libyans of Africa. In 3 of its occurrences, Put is rendered Libyans by the Greek Septuagint and the Latin Vulgate. Ge 46. 9. As 27. 10. 38. 5 The Hebrew Put also corresponds closely to the Put usually considered to be Livia of Old Persian inscriptions. However, Nasham 3. 9 seems to indicate that Put and the Luvim Libyans are separate peoples. But this in itself would not rule out identifying Put with the Libyans. The term Libyans was perhaps more comprehensive than the Hebrew designation Luvim, as may be deduced from the reference made by Herodotus 2:32 to Libyans, many tribes of them. The identification of Put with the Punt of Egyptian inscriptions is not generally accepted today for phonetic reasons. Puteoli pu middle dot to o middle dot li. In the 1st century CE, chief ports of Rome. Paul arrived at Puteoli on his way to stand before Caesar in Rome about the year 59 CE. Act 28. 13. With the help of east wind, his ship arrived on the 2nd day at Puteoli from Rhegium, a place some 320 kilometers 200 mi to the east at sea. Christian brothers of Puteoli entreated Paul and those accompanying him to spend a week with them. Act 28. 14. This indicates he enjoyed some freedom, though a prisoner. Earlier, while in custody at Caesarea and Sidon, Paul had similarly benefited from limited freedom. Act 24. 23. 27. 3. Puteoli is generally identified with modern Pozzuoli, on the bay of the same name, about 10 kilometers 6 mi wSW of Naples. Extensive ruins of an ancient O-textoi acute Muritra Longo, 718 Cope. The 19th letter of the Hebrew alphabet. In translating Hebrew names where it occurs, Cope is usually represented in English by C or K, as in Canaan and Kish. The sound is stronger than that of the letter Kaf and is pronounced farther back in the throat, as a strong English Q formed at the back of the palate. In the Hebrew, it is the initial letter in each of the 8 verses in Psalm 119. 145-152. Quailheb. Slaw. A small, plump-bodied bird, about 18 centimeters 7 inches in length, that spends most of its time on the ground. Its flesh is very edible, and it is reported that by 1920 Egypt was exporting some 3 million quail annually to foreign markets, though this exportation has since decreased. The birds described in the Bible are evidently the common migratory quail Coturnix, which move northward from within Africa in the spring, arrive in Egypt about March, thereafter pass through Arabia and Palestine, and return at the approach of winter. They travel in large flocks, making their migration in stages and often flying during the night. Their wings allow for speedy flight, but not for very long distances. Because of the heaviness of their bodies in relation to their wing strength, they sometimes arrive at their destination in a state of exhaustion. Quail, therefore, fly with the wind and customarily fly at rather low altitudes. Colonel Richard Meinitz-Hagen relates that in Port Said, Egypt, men at times use butterfly nets to catch quail as the birds fly down the streets at dawn. Birds of Arabia, Edinburgh, 1954, p. 569. The first reference to quail in the biblical account X 16. 13 is with reference to events in the spring X 16. 1. And so the birds would have been flying north. The Israelites were in the wilderness of Sin on the Sinai Peninsula, complaining about their food supplies. In response, Jehovah assured Moses that between the 2 evenings they would eat meat and in the morning would be satisfied with bread. X 16. 12 That evening the quails began to come up and cover the camp, while in the morning the manna appeared on the earth. X 16. 13-15. PS 105. 40 again, evidently in the spring New 10. 11. 33. About 1 year later, the grumblings of the Israelites over their limited diet of manna caused Jehovah to foretell that they would eat meat up to a month of days until it became revolting to them. New 11. 4. 18-23 God then caused a wind, likely from the Eos, to drive quail from the sea and cause them to fall above the camp, abundant like the sand grains over a wide area for several miles around the camp's perimeter. New 11. 31. PS 78. 25-28. The expression about 2 cubits c. 1 meter 3 feet above the surface of the earth has been explained in different ways. New 11. 31. Some consider that the quail actually fell to the ground and that in some places they were piled up to that height. Others, objecting that such action would undoubtedly result in a large portion of them dying and hence becoming unfit for eating by the Israelites, understand the text to mean that the quail flew at that low altitude over the ground, thereby making it quite easy for the Israelites to knock them to the ground and capture them. Expressing a similar idea, the Greek Septuagint reads, all around the camp, about 2 cubits from the earth. And the Latin Vulgate says, all around the camp, and they were flying in the air at an altitude of 2 cubits above the earth. The Israelites spent a day and a half gathering the quail. The one collecting least gathered 10 homers 2,200 L62 bu. New 11. 32 in view of the 600,000 men on foot, mentioned by Moses. New 11. 21. The number of quail collected must have been many millions. Hence it was no simple catch resulting from ordinary migration but, rather, a powerful demonstration of divine power. The quantity collected was too great for eating then. Hence the greedy Israelites otextoi acute miritra longo, quarry 719 them into quarrels, and foolish ones do not exercise the needed restraint to avoid quarreling. PI 18. 6. 20. 3 Since the squeezing out of anger results in quarreling. PR 30. 33. Slowness to anger has the opposite effect. PR 15. 18. Quarreling destroys a peaceful atmosphere. PR 17. 1 And may cause even the meekest of persons to lose self-control. For example, Israel's quarreling about there being no water at Kadesh prompted Moses and Aaron to act rashly, thereby losing the privilege of entering the promised land. Israel's unjustified quarreling with Jehovah's representatives actually constituted a quarrel with Jehovah. New 20. 2, 3, 10-13. 27. 14. PS 106. 32 Those who become similarly involved in quarreling or violent controversies with God's servants are in a very serious position, one that can lead to death. Compare ISA 41. 8, 11, 12. 54. 17. Because of the detrimental effect of quarreling, the proverb counsels. Before the quarrel has burst forth, take your leave. PR 17. 14 Abraham set a good example in this regard. Concerned that there be no disputes between his herdsmen and those of his nephew Lot, Abram suggested that they separate. Unselfishly he gave Lot the opportunity to choose the area where he would pasture his animals. GE 13. 7-11 On the other hand, unfaithful Israelites in the time of Isaiah did not act like their forefather Abraham. Of them, it is said, for quarreling and struggle you would fast. Even during the fast they were engaged in quarreling. ISA 58. 4. The Mosaic law covered cases of quarreling resulting in bodily injury. It prescribed paying compensation to the injured party for time lost from work. X 21. 18, 19. Murmuring. Murmuring discourages and tears down. The Israelites, not long out of Egypt, murmured against Jehovah, finding fault with the leadership that he provided by his servants Moses and Aaron. X 16. 2, 7 Later their complaints so discouraged Moses that he asked to die. New 11. 13-15 Murmuring can be a deadly danger to the murmurer. Jehovah counted the things said by murmurers about Moses as actually being a rebellious complaint against his own divine leadership. New 14. 26-30 Many lost their lives as a result of fault-finding. Accordingly, the Christian Greek scriptures draw on the ancient examples to warn of the destructiveness of murmuring, or complaining. 1 Co 10. 10, 11 Jude tells of those who disregard lordship and speak abusively of glorious ones, describing such ones as murmurers, complainers about their lot in life, proceeding according to their own desires, and their mouths speak swelling things, while they are admiring personalities for the sake of their own benefit. Jude 8, 16. Jesus condemned the fault-finding attitude when he said, "Stop judging that you may not be judged. Why, then, do you look at the straw in your brother's eye, but do not consider the rafter in your own eye?" Hypocrite. First extract the rafter from your own eye, and then you will see clearly how to extract the straw from your brother's eye. Mount 7. 1, 3-5. Compare 2. 1. Quarry. An open pit excavation from which various types of stone are cut. Limestone and marble, lying near the surface, are thus quarried. A large area near the present Damascus Gate of Jerusalem is believed to have been an ancient quarry. The first reference to such a place is at Joshua 7. 4, 5, where it is reported that about 3,000 Israelites fled from Ai as far as Shebarim, meaning quarries. When Solomon prepared to build the temple, he commanded that great foundation stones be quarried from the mountains of Lebanon, and tens of thousands of men were conscripted for the work. 1 Kai 5. 13-18. 6. 7. When it was necessary to repair the temple in the days of Jehoash, hewers of stone were hired for the work. 2 Kai 12. 11. 12. The tomb where Jesus was buried was one quarried out of rock. Mount 27. 59, 60. Mr. 15. 46. Using an eloquent metaphor, O textoi acute muritra longo, quartz 720 deep in the rock. Into these, dry wood was driven, where it was then made to swell with water until the rock split along its cleavage lines. In Roman times, stones weighing as much as 5 or 10 tons were quarried some distance from the building sites. These were then moved on rollers or on sledges, the power being supplied by great armies of slave labor. Quart. After the opening of the third seal, as referred to at Revelation 6. 5, 6, both a koinix of wheat and 3 koinai middle.kes of barley are said to sell for a denarius. Generally, scholars believe the size of the koinix to be slightly more than a liter or a little less than a US dry quart. Since a denarius was a day's wage in John's time, Mount 20. 1-12, the selling of grains at such prices would indicate famine conditions. Quartermaster. Possibly the officer in charge of rations and supplies for the troops. A literal translation of the Hebrew Samenu middle.cha is prince of the resting place and may mean the one in charge of the king's living quarters when on a campaign or journey. Seraiah's quartermaster for King Zedekiah of Judah accompanied him on the trip to Babylon in the 4th year of Zedekiah's reign, carrying with him Jeremiah's written prophecy against Babylon. After reading it aloud in that city, Seraiah pitched it, tied to a stone, into the Euphrates, as a symbol of Babylon's future fall, never to rise again. Jah 51. 59-64. Quartus Cutus from Latin, meaning fourth. One living in Corinth, whose greetings Paul included in his letter to the Romans, about 56 CE 16. 23. Having a Roman name and knowing the brothers in Rome, he may have formerly been of that congregation. Queen. In the modern sense, a title given either to a wife of a king or to a female monarch. In the Bible the title most often refers to women outside the kingdoms of Israel and Judah. The Hebrew word most nearly expressing the idea of queen as it is understood today is Maal middle.ka. But it was rare in the Orient for a woman to possess ruling authority. The Queen of Sheba may have been one with such power. 1 Kai 10. 1. Mount 12. 42. In the Christian Greek scriptures, queen is translated from the word ba middle.c lis middle.sa, the feminine form of the word for king. The title is applied to Queen Candace of Ethiopia. Agate. 27. In the Hebrew scriptures Maal middle.ka is more often used with reference to a queen consort, or the leading wife of a king of a foreign power. Vashti, as the chief wife of King Ahasuerus of Persia, was a consort queen rather than a ruling one. She was replaced by the Jewess Esther, making Esther consort queen, and while Esther had royal dignity, she was not an associate ruler as one. 9, 12, 19. 2. 17, 22. 4. 11. Any authority she might have had was by the king's grant. Compare as 8. 1-8, 10. 9. 29-32. Israel. The Hebrew word Jevi middle.ra, translated queen in some versions, means, more correctly, lady or mistress. In the instances where the title is used, it seems to apply mainly to the mother or grandmother of the king, such women being given royal respect, for example, Jezebel the mother of King Jehoram of Israel. 2 Kai 10. 13. When Solomon's mother approached him with a request, he bowed to her and had a throne set for her at his right. 1 Kai 2. 19. The lady could be deposed by the king, as was Maacah the grandmother of King Asa of Judah, whom he removed from being lady because she had made a horrible idol to the sacred pole. 1 Kai 15. 13. No woman could legally become head of state in the kingdoms of Israel and Judah. 17. 14, 15. However, after the death of her son Ahaziah king of Judah, Athaliah, who was the daughter of wicked King Ahab of Israel, and his wife Jezebel, destroyed all the kingdom except Ahaziah's son Jehoash, whom Ahaziah's sister Jehosheba had hidden. Athaliah then reigned illegally for 6 years, until executed on orders from high priest Jehoiada. 2K11 1-3, 13-16. Babylon. O textoi acute miritra longo, Quirinius 721 of the heavens. J7. 18. 44. 17, 18. See Queen of the Heavens. Babylon the Great is shown, at Revelation 18. 7, to be saying boastfully, I sit a Queen Gr. Ba middle.c Lissa, sitting on peoples in crowds and nations and tongues. Re 17. 15. She maintains her control through her immoral relations with earthly rulers, even as did many queens of the past. Re 17. 1-5. 18. 3, 9. See Babylon the Great. Queenly consort in heaven. Since Hebrews 1. 8, 9 applies Psalm 45. 6, 7 to Christ Jesus, it seems likely that the king's daughter of Psalm 45. 13 is prophetic of his bride class. This would make the queenly consort Heb. She middle.il mentioned in Psalm 45. 9 the wife of the great king, Jehovah. It is not upon this queenly consort, but upon Jesus Christ and his 144,000 associates redeemed from the earth that Jehovah confers authority to rule as kings. Re 20. 4, 6. Jar 7. 13, 14, 27. Queen of the Heavens. The title of a goddess worshipped by apostate Israelites in the days of Jeremiah. J 44. 17-19. Although the women were primarily involved, apparently the entire family participated in some way in worshipping the Queen of the Heavens. The women baked sacrificial cakes, the sons collected the firewood, and the fathers lit the fires. J 7. 18. That the worship of this goddess had a strong hold on the Jews is reflected by the fact that those who had fled down to Egypt after the murder of Governor Daly attributed their calamity to their neglecting to make sacrificial smoke and drink offerings to the Queen of the Heavens. The prophet Jeremiah, though, forcefully pointed out the wrongness of their view. J 44. 15-30. The scriptures do not specifically identify the Queen of the Heavens. It has been suggested that this goddess is to be identified with the Sumerian fertility goddess Inanna, but Babylonian Ishtar. The name Inanna literally means Queen of Heaven. The corresponding Babylonian goddess Ishtar was qualified in the Akkadian texts by the epithets Queen of the Heavens and Queen of the Heavens and of the Stars. It appears that Ishtar worship spread to other countries. In one of the Amarna tablets, Tushratta, writing to Amenephis III, mentions Ishtar, Mistress of Heaven. In Egypt, an inscription of King Horemheb, believed to have reigned in the 14th century BCE, mentions Astarte Ishtar, Lady of Heaven. A fragment of a stele found at Memphis from the reign of Merneptah, Egyptian king believed to have reigned in the 13th century BCE, represents Astarte with inscription Astarte, Lady of Heaven. In the Persian period, at Sin Modernus I, Astarte was surnamed the Queen of the Heavens. The worship of the Queen of the Heavens was practiced as late as the 4th century CE. In about 375 CE, in his treatise Spinarian 79, 1, 7, Epiphanius states, some women decorate a sort of chariot or a four-cornered bench and, after stretching over it a piece of linen, on a certain feast day of the year they place in front of it a loaf for some days and offer it up in the name of Mary. Then all the women partake of this loaf. Epiphanius 79, 8, 1, 2 connected these practices with the worship of the Queen of the Heavens presented in Jeremiah, and quotes Jeremiah 7, 18 and 44. 25. Epiphanius, edited by Karl Hohl, Leipzig, 1933, Volume 3, pages 476, 482, 483. Quirinius qui middle.us. Roman governor of Syria at the time of the registration ordered by Caesar Augustus that resulted in Jesus' birth taking place in Bethlehem. Lu 2. 1, 2. His full name was Publius Sulpicius Quirinius. In the Chronographus Antiquae, a list of Roman consuls, the name of Quirinius appears in 12 BCE along with that of Messala. Chronica Minora, edited by T. Mommsen, Munich, 1981, Volume I, p. 56. Roman historian Tacitus briefly recounts Quirinius' history, saying, "He sprang from the municipality of Lanuvium. Had no connection. But as an intrepid soldier and o textoi acute miritra longo, quiver 722 Gaulonite." Jewish Antiquities, 18, 1, 2, 3, 4a, 1. This is evidently the revolt referred to by Luke at Acts 5. 37. According to Josephus' account, it took place in the 37th year after Caesar's defeat of Antony at Actium. Jewish Antiquities, 18, 26-2. 1. That would indicate that Quirinius was governor of Syria in 6 CE. For a long time it was the only governorship of Syria by Quirinius for which secular history supplied confirmation. However, in the year 1764 an inscription known as the Lapis Tibutinus was found in Rome, which, though not giving the name, contains information that most scholars acknowledge could apply only to Quirinius. Corpus Inscriptionum Latinarum, edited by H. Dessau, Berlin, 1887, Volume 14, p. 397, no. 3613. It contains the statement that on going to Syria he became governor or legate for the second time. On the basis of inscriptions found in Antioch containing Quirinius' name, many historians acknowledge that Quirinius was also governor of Syria in the BCE period. There is uncertainty on their part, however, as to where Quirinius fits among the secularly recorded governors of Syria. Josephus lists Quintilius Varus as governor of Syria at the time of, and subsequent to, the death of Herod the Great. Jewish Antiquities, 17, 89 v. 2. 17, 221-9. 3. Tacitus also refers to Varus as being governor at the time of Herod's death. The Histories, v. 9. Josephus states that Varus' predecessor was Saturninus C. Sentius Saturninus. Many scholars, in view of the evidence of an earlier governorship by Quirinius, suggest the years 3-2 BCE for his governorship. While these dates would harmonize satisfactorily with the biblical record, the basis on which these scholars select them is in error. That is, they list Quirinius as governor during those years, because they place his rule after that of Varus, and hence after the death of Herod the Great, for which they use the popular but erroneous date of 4 BCE. See chronology. Herod number 1 date of his death. For the same reason, that is, their use of the unproved date 4 BCE for Herod's death, they give Varus governorship as from 6 to 4 BCE. The length of his rule, however, is conjectural, for Josephus does not specify the date of its beginning or of its end. The best evidence points to 2 BCE for the birth of Jesus. Hence Quirinius' governorship must have included this year or part thereof. Some scholars call attention to the fact that the term used by Luke, and usually translated governor, is here Monday. This Greek term is used to describe Roman legates, procurators, and proconsuls, and it means, basically, a leader or high executive officer. Some, therefore, suggest that, at the time of what Luke refers to as the first registration, Quirinius served in Syria in the capacity of a special legate of the emperor exercising extraordinary powers. A factor that may also aid in understanding the matter is Josephus' clear reference to a dual rulership of Syria, since in his account he speaks of 2 persons, Saturninus and Volumnius, serving simultaneously as governors of Syria. Jewish Antiquities, 16, 277, 289, 1. 16, 344x, 8. Thus, if Josephus is correct in his listing of Saturninus and Varus's successive presidents of Syria, it is possible that Quirinius served simultaneously either with Saturninus as Volumnius had done or with Varus prior to Herod's death, which likely occurred in 1 BCE. The New Schaff-Herzog Encyclopedia of Religious Knowledge presents this view. Quirinius stood in exactly the same relation to Varus, the governor of Syria, as at a later time Vespasian did to Mucianus. Vespasian conducted the war in Palestine, while Mucianus was governor of Syria. And Vespasian was legatus Augusti, holding precisely the same title and technical rank as Mucianus. 1957, Volume 9, pages 375, 376. an inscription found in Venice Lapiso Textoi Acute Miritra Longo 723 Rama Rara Ma. A son of Ham's firstborn, Cush, and brother of Nimrod. Rama and his two sons Sheba and Dedan founded 3 of the 70 post-flood families. GE 10. 6-8. 1ch1. 9 Many centuries later the tribal descendants of Rama, Dedan, and Sheba all carried on trade with Tyre. As 27. 20, 22 Just where the tribe springing from Rama resided is uncertain, but the city of Rama-Neema in Inns Arabia is likely. Ra-Amir middle. Jehovah has thundered. Uproar of Jehovah. One who returned to Jerusalem with Zerubbabel. The name is an alternate form of Eliah. Ne 7. 7. As 2. 2. Ramses Ra middle. Ramses, Ramesses from Egyptian, meaning Ra the sun god has begotten him. When Jacob's family moved into Egypt they were assigned to live in the land of Ramesses. GE 47. 11 Since elsewhere they are spoken of as residing in the land of Goshen, it appears that Ramesses was either a district within Goshen or was another name for Goshen. GE 47. 6 Later, the Israelites were enslaved and put to building cities as storage places for Pharaoh, namely, Pithom and Ramses. The vowel pointing here differs slightly from that of Ramesses. X1. 11 Many scholars suggest that Ramses was so named for the district of Ramesses in which they assume it was located. When the exodus from Egypt began, Ramesses is given as the starting point. Most scholars assume that the city is here meant, perhaps being the rendezvous site where the Israelites gathered from various parts of Goshen. But Ramesses may here refer to a district, and it may be that the Israelites pulled away from all parts of the district, converging on Succoth as the place of rendezvous. X12. 37. New 33. 3-5. The exact location of this starting point, if a city rather than a district is meant, is very uncertain. Modern scholars identify Ramesses with the city called Ramses House of Ramses in Egyptian records, placed by some at San el-Hagar in the Eni corner of the delta, and by others at Cantia, about 20 kilometers 12 mi to the south. But this identification rests on the theory that Ramses II was the pharaoh of the Exodus. This theory, in turn, is based on inscriptions of Ramses II giving his claim to having built the city bearing his name Ramses, using slave labor. There is little reason, however, to believe that Ramses II was the ruler at the time of the Exodus, since his rule is not likely to have been much earlier than the 13th century BCE or between 200 and 300 years after the Exodus 1513 BCE. The biblical Ramses began to be built before Moses' birth, hence over 80 years before the Exodus. X1. 11, 15, 16, 22. 2. 1-3 Furthermore, it is held that Ramses was the capital city in the time of Ramses II, whereas the biblical Ramses was only a storage place. It is generally accepted that Ramses II was guilty of taking credit for certain achievements of his predecessors, and this raises the possibility that, at best, he only rebuilt or enlarged Ramses. Finally, the name Ramesses was clearly in use as far back as the time of Joseph in the 18th century BCE. So there is no reason to assume that its application in the form Ramses as the name of a city was exclusive with the time of Ramses II. GE 47. 11 Its very meaning, too, makes it likely that it was popular among the Egyptians from early times. By the reign of Ramses II there were a number of towns that bore that name. D.B. Redford says, Biblical Ramses and the capital PRMS' Ramses, apart from the personal name, seem to have nothing in common. In the complete lack of corroborative evidence it is absolutely essential to exercise caution in equating the two. Vetus Testamentum, Leiden, 1963, p. 410. Because of the lack of reliable information, it can only be said that Ramesses was likely not far from the Egyptian capital of the time of the Exodus. This would allow for Moses to have been at Pharaoh's palace on no textoi acute miritra longo. Rabbi 724 was on a tributary of the Upper Jabbok and was thus in position to benefit from the rich fertility of that region. Also, it was an important link in the trade route between Damascus and Arabia. Rabbah of the sons of Ammon Rab Mon is first mentioned in the Bible as being the location of the iron bier of Og, king of Bashan. 3. 11 When the Israelites came to the Promised Land, the tribe of Gad received Amorite land formerly, it seems, held by Ammon as far as Aroer, which is in front of perhaps to the Eni of Rabbah. Jos 13. 25. Captured by David. The city is mentioned again in connection with war resulting from the abuse of David's messengers by King Nun of Ammon. 2 Sa 10. 1-19. 1ch19. 1-19 Joab and his troops fought Syrians high by the Ammonites, while the Israelites under Abishai went up against the Ammonites at the entrance of the city, evidently Rabbah. 1ch19. 9 When the Syrians were defeated, the Ammonites retreated into the city. The next spring Joab and his army besieged Rabbah. It was during this campaign that David in Jerusalem sinned with Bathsheba. The king sent her husband Uriah the Hittite back to battle, and according to David's instructions, Uriah was put in the front lines. When some Ammonites sallied forth from Rabbah, the battle brought Uriah close enough to be killed by an archer on the wall. 2 Sa 11. 1-25. 1ch20. 1. In time Joab succeeded in his fight against Rabbah to the point of capturing the city of waters. 2 Sa 12. 27 Since Joab then informed David of the situation so that the king would come and complete the conquest and thus get credit for capturing Rabbah, it seems that Joab captured only a portion of the city. The expression city of waters may refer to a part on the river bank, as distinguished from some other part of the city, or it may mean that he secured control of the city's principal water supply. 2 Sa 12. 26-28. David came and completed the capture of Rabbah, and the spoil of the city that he brought out was very much. 2 Sa 12. 29-31. 1ch20. 2, 3 Eventually the Ammonites became independent again. In the 9th century BCE Amos foretold judgment against the Ammonites, and he specifically mentioned that Rabbah would be burned. Am 1. 13, 14 Both Jeremiah and Ezekiel also delivered messages against Rabbah. As shown under Ammonites, these prophecies were evidently fulfilled in Nebuchadnezzar's time. Jer 49. 2, 3. Es 21. 19-23. 25. 5. In the 3rd century BCE Ptolemy Philadelphus rebuilt Rabbah and renamed the city Philadelphia. It was later included among the cities of the Decapolis and apparently was quite prosperous and strong. The modern city of Amman is located here, and there are considerable ancient ruins, including a huge amphitheater, but these date mainly from Roman times. 2. One of the cities given to the tribe of Judah in its territorial allotment. Its exact location is unknown. In Joshua 15. 60 it is listed with Kiriath Jearim, which was in the hill country of Judah 13 km 8 MWNW of Jerusalem. Rabbi. The designation rabbi was used in a de facto sense as teacher. Jo 1. 38 But among the Jews, shortly before the birth of Jesus, it came ruins at Amman, the location of ancient Rabbah of Ammon and later of Philadelphia in the Decapolis. Rab Sheikh 725 to be used also as a form of address and as a title of respect and honor meaning my great one. My excellent one. The title was demanded by some of the learned men, scribes, teachers of the law. They delighted to be called rabbi as an honorary title. Jesus Christ condemned such title-seeking and forbade his followers to be called rabbi, as he was their teacher. Mount 23. 6-8. In the Bible the term rabbi is used only in the Christian Greek scriptures. It is employed 12 times in connection with Jesus, in the de facto sense of teacher. Twice by Peter Mr. 9. 5. 11. 21, once by 2 disciples of John Jo 1. 38, once by Nathanael Jo 1. 49, once by Nicodemus Jo 3. 2, 3 times by disciples of Jesus whose names are not specified Jo 4. 31. 9. 2. 11. 8, once by the crowds Jo 6. 25, and 2 times by Judas. 1 instance is repeated Mount 26. 25, 49. Mr. 14. 45. Jesus is addressed by Mary Magdalene as Rabboni, my teacher, also by blind man whom he healed. The personal pronoun I is a suffix here, but because of usage it seems to have lost its significance, as in Monsieur, originally meaning my Lord. Joe 20. 16. Mr. 10. 51. John the Baptist is once addressed as Rabbi. Joe 3. 26. Birth Rab birth multitude. Abundance. According to the Masoretic text, a site on Issachar's boundary. Joe's 19. 17, 18, 20. It is thought to be the same as Debarath, identified with but Deburahorvet Deborah. Joe's 19. 12. Supporting this view is the fact that Vatican manuscript No. 1209, of the 4th century CE has dar middle dot by middle dot drawn in place of birth. See Debarath. Rabboni Rab middle dot Boani. A Semitic word meaning my teacher. Mr. 10. 51. It may be that Rabboni was a more respectful form than Rabbi, which title of address means teacher, or that it conveyed more personal warmth. Joe 1. 38. However, when John wrote, perhaps the first person suffix I on this word had lost its special significance in the title, since John translates it as meaning merely teacher. Joe 20. 16. Rab Mag. The title of a major official of the Babylonian Empire at the time that Jerusalem was destroyed in 607 BCE. The title has been identified on excavated inscriptions. Nagal-Sharezar the Rab Mag was one of the men in the special tribunal of high Babylonian princes who sat in judgment in Jerusalem's middle gate after the city fell to Nebuchadnezzar, and who is mentioned in connection with Jeremiah's being released to go to Gedalia. J 39. 3, 13, 14. Robsar is Rabsa Middle-Trish Chief Court Official. The title of the chief court official in the Assyrian and Babylonian governments. The Robsaris was one of the committee of 3 high Assyrian dignitaries that was sent by the king of Assyria to demand the surrender of Jerusalem in King Hezekiah's time. 2 Kai 18. 17. The Robsaris was one of the Babylonian officials taking control of Jerusalem from Nebuchadnezzar when the city fell in 607 BCE, and Boshazban is named as the Robsaris in connection with Jeremiah's being directed to dwell with Gedalia. J 39. 3, 13, 14. 40. 1-5 excavations have unearthed inscriptions bearing the title. Bulletin of the Israel Exploration Society, Jerusalem, 1967, Volume XXXI, p. 77. Le Palais Royal du Garret, 3, Paris, 1955, no. 16. 162, p. 126. Rabshakeh Rabshah Middle.Keh from Akkadion, probably meaning chief cupbearer. The title of a major Assyrian official. 2 Kai 18. 17. A building inscription of the Assyrian king Tiglath-Pileser III says, I sent an officer of mine, the Rabshakeh, to Tyre. Also, from a tablet in the British Museum an inscription of King Ashurbanipal reads, I ordered to add to my former battle forces in Egypt the Rabshakeh officer. Ancient Near Eastern Texts, edited by J. Pritchard, 1974, pages 282, 296. While Sennacherib, the king of Assyria, was laying siege to the Judean fortress of Lachish, he sent a heavy military force to Jerusalem under Netartan, the commander-in-chief, along with Otextoi Acute Muritra Longo. Rakel 726. Nevertheless, the people of Jerusalem remained loyal to Hezekiah. 2 Kai 18. 36. The taunting words of Rabshakeh were taken by Hezekiah to Jehovah in prayer, and a delegation was sent to the prophet Isaiah to receive Jehovah's reply. 2 Kai 18. 37. 19. 1-7. In the meantime Rabshakeh was quickly called away when he heard that the king of Assyria had pulled away from Lachish and was fighting against Libnah. Keeping up his propaganda campaign against Hezekiah from a distance, Sennacherib sent messengers to Jerusalem with letters of continued taunt and strong threat to bring Hezekiah to surrender. 2 Kai 19. 8-13 King Hezekiah took the letters to the Temple of Jerusalem and spread them before Jehovah along with his urgent prayer for help. 2K19 14-19 Jehovah gave his answer through the prophet Isaiah that the king of Assyria will not come into this city, nor will he shoot an arrow there, nor confront it with a shield, nor cast up a siege rampart against it. By the way by which he proceeded to come, he will return, and into this city he will not come, is the utterance of Jehovah. 2K19 32-33 That night the angel of Jehovah struck down in death 185,000 soldiers of the Assyrians. This unexpected mighty blow caused Sennacherib, the king of Assyria, to withdraw immediately and return to Nineveh, Assyria's capital, where Sennacherib was assassinated sometime later. 2K19 35-37 As a blasphemous taunter of the living God Jehovah, Rabshakeh's efforts came to nothing. Rakal. One of the places to which David sent spoils from his war with the Amalekites. 1-30. 18. 26, 29 The Greek Septuagint has Carmel instead of Rakal, and some scholars believe this represents the original reading. Races. See Bible Races and Languages. Games. Man. Rachel Mu. Female sheep. A daughter of Laban, younger sister of Leah, and Jacob's first cousin and preferred wife. GE 29. 10, 16. 30 Jacob fled from his murderous brother Esau in 1781 BCE, traveling to Haran in Padanaram, in the land of the Orientals. GE 28. 5. 29. 1 Rachel, a girl beautiful in form and beautiful of countenance, served as a shepherdess for her father. She met Jacob at a well near Haran. Jacob was received into his uncle's household and 1 month later agreed to serve Laban 7 years in order to marry Rachel, with whom he was now in love. His love did not weaken during the 7 years, and so these proved to be like some few days to him. On the wedding night, however, his uncle substituted the older daughter Leah, who evidently cooperated in carrying out the deceit. The following morning when Jacob accused him of trickery, Laban appealed to local custom as an excuse for his conduct. Jacob agreed to carry out a full marriage week with Leah before receiving Rachel, and thereafter to work another 7 years for Laban. GE 29. 4-28. Rachel did not disappoint Jacob as his wife, and Jacob showed her more love than Leah. Jehovah now favored Leah in her disadvantaged position, blessing her with 4 sons, while Rachel remained barren. GE 29. 29-35 Rachel displayed jealousy of her sister as well as despair over her own infertility, a condition then viewed as a great reproach among women. Her fretful impatience angered even her loving husband. To compensate for her own barrenness, she gave Jacob her maidservant for procreation purposes as Sarah had done earlier with her slave Hagar, and the 2 children born as a result were considered Rachel's. Leah's maid and Leah herself produced a total of 4 more sons before Rachel's hope was finally realized and she brought forth her own first son, Joseph. GE 30. 1-24. Jacob was now ready to depart from Haran, but his father-in-law prevailed upon him to remain longer, and it was 6 years later that, at God's direction, Jacob pulled away. Because of Laban's double-dealing methods, Jacob did not advise him of his departure, and both Leah and Rachel were o textoi acute miritra longo. Rehab 727 The few details recorded can give only an incomplete picture of Rachel's personality. She was a worshipper of Jehovah GE 30. 22-24, but she showed human failings, her theft of the teraphim and her shrewdness in avoiding detection perhaps being at least partly attributable to her family background. Whatever her weaknesses, she was dearly loved by Jacob, who, even in old age, viewed her as having been his true wife and prized her children over all his others. GE 44. 27-29 His words to Joseph shortly before dying, though simple, nevertheless convey the depth of Jacob's affection for her. GE 48. 1-7 She and Leah are spoken of as having built the house of Israel Jacob. Ru 4. 11. Archaeological discoveries may shed some light on Rachel's appropriation of her father's teraphim. GE 31. 19 cuneiform tablets found at Nuzzian in Mesopotamia, believed to date from about the middle of the 2nd millennium BCE, revealed that some ancient peoples viewed the possession of household gods as representing legal title to inheritance of family property. Ancient Near Eastern Texts, edited by J. Pritchard, 1974, pages 219, 220. Some suggest that Rachel may have felt that Jacob had the right to a share in the inheritance in Laban's property as an adopted son, and that she may have taken the teraphim to ensure this, or even to gain advantage over Laban's sons. Or she may have viewed the possession of these as a means of blocking any legal attempt by her father to claim some of the wealth Jacob had gained while in his